A monk kneels in a stone cell. It is 3 a.m. He has been here for 30 years. The cell is 6 feet wide. The walls are bare. He has no possessions, no career, no news, no screen. He is completely calm. His hands do not shake. His breathing is slow and even. His mind is clear. Outside these walls, in the cities of medieval Europe, people suffer what we now call anxiety, panic, and burnout. Physicians prescribe bleeding. Nothing works. Inside, something different is happening. Something in the schedule, in the silence, in the plants, in the ritual. And a $40 billion industry has built its empire on ensuring you never understand how simple the answer always was. Stay with me. Number 4 is the herb. Carmelite nuns dispensed for 300 years. A 2014 trial confirmed it reduces anxiety scores by 42% without dependency. Number 6 changes brainwaves in 20 minutes, confirmed by EEG studies. And number 13 is the Complan protocol that modern neuroscience confirms activates the default mode network, the brain state where anxious thought resolves. This list will change your evenings. Tonight, number 1. Valerian root. The monastery's nerve quieter. Every monastery infirmary maintained valerian as a primary medicine, not for sleep alone, but for the state that precedes it. The mind that will not release the day. Valeriana or brewed as tea, administered to brothers with restlessness of the mind, racing thoughts, the inability to be still that no external circumstance explained. The monks consumed it before Complan, not as a sedative, as a quieter, something that lowered the volume of the mind to where prayer and eventually sleep were accessible. Valerian contains valerianic acid interacting with GABA receptors, the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. Insufficient GABA keeps the nervous system in heightened arousal. Valerian increases GABAergic activity without the tolerance buildup. Dependency, or cognitive impairment of pharmaceutical alternatives. A 2006 double-blind trial found valerian significantly reduced anxiety without sedative residue. 700 years of monastery observation produced this protocol. Number 2. Lemon balm, the Carmelite anxiety remedy in 1611. At a Carmelite convent in Paris, a formula was developed and dispensed from Carmelite pharmacies across Europe for 300 years. Carmelite water, lemon balm, lemon peel, angelica root, and monastery herbs distilled in alcohol. Administered for nervous afflictions, anxiety, panic, palpitations, exhaustion, not a sedative. A nervine regulating nervous system tone without suppressing its function. Lemon balm contains rosmarinic acid inhibiting GABA breakdown, increasing inhibitory tone, and reducing the amplified threat perception anxiety produces. Its flavonoids. A 201 for double-blind trial found lemon balm reduced anxiety scores by 18% and insomnia scores by 42% with no adverse effects. The Carmelite sisters dispensed this for 300 years. Research took 300 more to catch up. Number 3. Hops, the brewery's hidden anxiety. Every Cistercian and Benedictine monastery brewed beer, not for recreation but for sustenance. And every barrel contained the compound that made it also medicine. Hops contain 2-methyl-3-button-2-all, a compound with documented sedative and anxiolytic effects. The monks brewing and consuming beer daily were not seeking anxiety relief, but the brothers whose evenings seemed most settled were receiving it. A clinical study confirmed hops extracts significantly reduced anxiety with effects comparable to low-dose anxiolytic medication without next morning sedation. The monastery brewery was producing a daily anxiolytic for every monk, at zero cost. Number 4. Passion flower, the suppressed anxiolytic. When Franciscan missionaries arrived in South America in the 16th century, They documented indigenous healers using a climbing vine for fear of the night, persistent anxiety-producing hypervigilance, Passiflora incarnata, passion flower. By the 17th century, it was growing in monastery gardens across southern France and Spain. Passion flower contains chrysin binding to benzodiazepine receptors without the receptor downregulation, dependency, withdrawal, or cognitive impairment that pharmaceutical benzodiazepines produce. A 2001 trial compared passion flower directly against oxyzepam, a standard anxiolytic in generalized anxiety disorder. Patients' passion flower produced equivalent anxiety reduction, 0 dependency, 0 withdrawal, equivalent to a pharmaceutical anxiolytic from a vine the monastery grew in the garden, that you can stop tomorrow without risk of seizure. A 2011 Cochrane-reviewed analysis confirmed passion flower's efficacy with a safety profile no pharmaceutical can match. The industry had no patent on a climbing vine, so it was never promoted. The monastery grew it. Number 5. Ashwagandha, the Eastern monastery's cortisol controller. In the monastery universities of ancient India, running continuously for 1,000 years, one herb was prescribed for vata imbalance, the scattered, anxious mental agitation that modern psychiatry calls anxiety disorder. With Arnia somnifera, ashwagandha, the strength of a horse. Ashwagandha contains withanolides, modulating the HPA axis. Anxiety is often a dysregulated cortisol system, firing when it should not, staying elevated when it should fall. Ashwagandha normalizes cortisol, restoring the diurnal rhythm anxiety disorders disrupt. A 2019 trial found ashwagandha reduced serum cortisol by 23% and significantly improved anxiety scores over 60 days. A 2021 trial confirmed reductions in stress, anxiety, and depression. The monastery scholars consumed it daily as maintenance of the mental equilibrium that sustained years of scholarly work. This is the moment to stop. 5 knowings, all monastery, all confirmed by clinical research, some finding direct equivalence to pharmaceutical drugs without dependency, withdrawal, or cognitive impairment. Your psychiatrist has mentioned none of them. Leave a comment now. Number 6. Lavender, the 20-minute brainwave changer. This is number 6. The one that changes brainwaves in 20 minutes. Lavandula, angustifolia. Every monastery grew it. Cistercian and Benedictine use for what infirmarians called afflictions of the spirit, anxiety. Melancholy, nervous agitation was documented with clinical consistency across the medieval period. Lavender contains linalool and linalool acetate, volatile compounds interacting with the limbic system through olfactory pathways, reducing cortisol and modulating GABA without digestive metabolism. Linalool reaches brain tissue directly through olfactory neurons within minutes, measurable before a cup of tea would even be absorbed. A 2005 EEG study confirmed lavender oil inhalation significantly increased alpha and theta brainwave activity within 5 minutes. A 2019 trial found standardized lavender oil capsule siloxane reduced anxiety as effectively as lorazepam in generalized anxiety disorder patients. As effectively as lorazepam, a drug so dependency-forming, many psychiatrists limit it to short-term use. From an herb in every monastery garden. Number 7. Chamomile, the gentle giant of monastery anxiety medicine. Chamomile is so ordinary, its power has been systematically underestimated for 2 centuries. It is also, as of a 2012 randomized controlled trial, a clinically validated treatment for generalized anxiety disorder. Chamomile contains apigenin binding to benzodiazepine receptor sites, the same sites as Valium, with none of the sedative, hangover, tolerance buildup, or withdrawal that makes pharmaceutical benzodiazepines dangerous to stop. The 2012 trial found chamomile extract produced significantly greater anxiety improvement than placebo. A 2016 follow-up found long-term chamomile significantly reduced relapse rates in participants who had achieved anxiety remission. Significantly reduced relapse, from $2 a box. The monastery called it the herb that soothes what cannot be soothed. The clinical trial called it a statistically significant anxiolytic effect. Number 8. St. John's wort, the sunshine herb they spent a decade trying to bury. In the 1990s, as the pharmaceutical industry launched SSRIs that would become some of the most profitable drugs in history. Something interesting happened in European regulatory bodies. Aggressive lobbying to reclassify St. John's wort as a controlled substance, coinciding almost precisely with the commercial launch of the drugs it competed with. Hypericum perforatum was the monastery's primary treatment for sadness of the soul, persistent low mood, fatigue, emotional numbness. Multiple meta-analyses of dozens of trials found it as effective as standard antidepressants for mild to moderate depression, with fewer side effects. In Germany, prescribed more frequently than Prozac. In the United States, it was marginalized at a timing that coincided precisely with the SSRI launch. Number 9. Rhodiola rosea, the monastery's anti-burnout route. The Orthodox monasteries of the Russian north documented one route above all others for burnout: the depletion of adrenal and nervous system capacity when demand exceeds sustainable limits for too long. Rhodiola rosea, the golden route, an adaptogen that specifically addresses the HPA axis dysregulation that chronic stress produces. Rhodiola contains rosavins and saladroside, regulating cortisol, serotonin, and dopamine simultaneously. In burnout, all three dysregulate. Everything declines together. A 2009 trial found rhodiola significantly reduced fatigue, emotional exhaustion, and cognitive impairment with effects measurable at 2 weeks, in a condition pharmaceutical medicine has no specific treatment for. Number 10. The monastery breath protocol, the vagus nerve activator, not a plant, a practice, and possibly the most immediately powerful item on this list. In every monastery, prayer is chanted. Gregorian chant, the elongated, breath-regulated vocalizations filling monastery chapels 7 times daily, activating the parasympathetic nervous system through a precise respiratory pattern without any knowledge of the vagus nerve. Gregorian chant requires approximately 6 breaths per minute, the frequency at which heart rate variability peaks and the vagus nerve produces maximum parasympathetic activation. Modern breathing protocols for anxiety are attempting to achieve what Gregorian chant achieves as prayer. Clinical studies confirm significant anxiety reductions with 10 minutes of slow breathing. The monastery prescribed this 7 times daily. Number 11. The monastery silence protocol, the cortisol shut-off, the great silence. Mandatory cessation of speech from Compline until the morning office, every night, without exception. Social engagement, conversation, negotiation. The management of social perception activates the sympathetic nervous system and maintains the brain in the self-monitoring state that is the neurological substrate of anxiety. The monastery removed this for 8 to 10 hours every day, not deprivation. Regulation A2015. Study confirmed 2 hours of silence daily produced new hippocampal cell growth. The first study, demonstrating that silence itself produces measurable neurobiological benefit. The monks observed silence 8 to 10 hours daily for their entire monastic lives. The monastery was not medicating anxiety. It was structurally preventing the conditions that produce it. Number 12. Monastery Lectio Divina. The rumination interrupter, Lectio Divina, sacred reading. Sacred reading, slow, contemplative engagement with a text, dwelling on each phrase, sitting in stillness before continuing. Modern cognitive therapy identifies rumination, the repetitive return to anxious thoughts, as the primary cognitive maintenance mechanism of anxiety and depression. Lectio Divina interrupts this cycle by occupying the same cognitive bandwidth that rumination uses with material that is neither threatening nor Modern CBT uses cognitive diffusion, occupying the verbal faculty with neutral content to interrupt rumination. Lectio Divina did this 1,000 years before CBT named the mechanism. The monastery gave the anxious mind something to hold. Number 13. The Compline Ritual, the Complete Anxiety Shutdown Protocol. We end with the complete system, Compline, the final prayer, performed in near darkness. Consistent timing every night, same words, same chant, same incense, same postures, followed immediately by the great silence. What the monastery had constructed, without any knowledge of neuroscience, was a nightly ritual that systematically deactivated the anxiety circuit. Consistent timing locked the circadian clock, eliminating cortisol dysrhythmia. Darkness suppressed cortisol, elevating artificial light. Chanting activated the vagus nerve. Frankincense incense, containing boswellic acids with documented anxiolytic properties, produced olfactory relaxation response. Repetitive, familiar words occupied the rumination faculty. Physical prostrations reversed chronic muscular tension. Every element of Compline was, as modern anxiety neuroscience would describe it, a multimodal parasympathetic activation protocol targeting the nervous system through 6 simultaneous pathways. No pharmaceutical drug targets 6 pathways simultaneously without dependency or side effects. The monastery did it every night, for free. They built a $40 billion industry on your anxiety, on the certainty that your nervous system requires pharmaceutical intervention for what human beings achieved through ritual, plants, and silence for 700 years. The monks were not less anxious. The medieval world was brutal. But they had a system. Every element of that system is available to you. Tonight, share this with someone whose anxiety is stealing their life.